Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. And today I welcome Ashleigh Di Lello to the show. And I'm excited to dive into Ashleigh's story around bio-emotional healing, what she's doing with that, her journey, what she's been on, what she's doing to serve the world. And yeah, just overall very excited for the conversation today. So just a quick introduction to Ashleigh. So Ashleigh is the founder and creator of bio-emotional healing, a revolutionary method based in neuroscience that helps her clients around the world finally break free from physical, mental, and emotional pain. Despite being told by doctors she wouldn't live past her teenage years, she refused to give up and discovered the secret to rewiring the brain-body connection. She became an elite athlete, TV and Broadway star, entrepreneur, brain coach, and keynote speaker. Welcome to the show today, Ashleigh.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to hear all of the things you've been up to, like I mentioned just a moment ago. So, Ashleigh, where I'd love to start, I don't know where I want to start this conversation because there's so much you're doing. But yeah, Ashleigh, I'd love to know from this moment of the doctors suggesting to you it's going to be a struggle to get past your teenage years to you discovering around the brain-body connection. How did that come about? I'd love to hear a little bit about how that mapped out and your discovery of all this stuff.
Yeah, man, that's a loaded question that I didn't even really understand when I was a teenager, that I was utilizing my brain in a way that, 2 decades later, when I started studying neuroscience to save my life the second time, I was making connections that I just was accessing because I had this deep belief that somehow I would live, because I wasn't given that chance. And I was sent home essentially to die. And I got so sick that there were nights I was really too afraid to go to sleep, afraid that if I surrendered that conscious will to live, that my body just wouldn't make it to the morning. So I would stay awake and I would will my body to keep fighting, because the brain is wired to validate beliefs. My brain was seeking evidence to validate my belief, right? That I would somehow get well and somehow dance again, because that at the time was the love of my life. My mom always said I started dancing as soon as I could walk, and so when I got sick, I'd been dancing 5 hours a day since I was 7 years old. So to lose that felt like I was losing my heart, right? A big part of my soul. And I was so determined to do it again that again, those beliefs just inherently directed my brain to find evidence. And there was no evidence in my life. I was so sick, I could hardly walk. I could hardly lift a finger. My organs were shutting down. My skin was yellow because my liver was literally shutting down. So there was no evidence in my reality that said this belief I had was possible. And so without anybody telling me, I had this thought one day. I remember I was in an MRI getting a scan, and I had this thought, well, if I can't dance in my body, then I'm going to dance in my mind. And so I started to visualize. I started to see myself dancing healthy again. I would go through class, I would go through movement patterns. I would see myself on the competition floor because I was a ballroom dancer, which is a competitive sport. I would see myself on stage. And I remember this one particular time, it felt so real that I started crying. And the technician that was watching me in the MRI machine, I remember, got concerned and, buzzed in and said, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And I said, "Yes, these are happy tears," because I was feeling the gratitude and joy so profoundly of doing something I loved so deeply. And I did this. I visualized and I felt that joy and that freedom and that gratitude. I did it for 6 years. And at that time, I had no idea about neuroplasticity or the brain or the nervous system. So I had no idea that creating that way with repetition and with that emotion over and over again was literally harnessing the nerves in my body to create neural memory as if I had been dancing. And that was making my brain more familiar with health again. Because frankly, after fighting for your life for 4 years, you start to forget what health even feels like. I remember even telling my mom, how do people have energy? to live their life, let alone go and have the strength to dance for 5 hours. So inadvertently, I was harnessing the brain's like one of its most incredible powers, which is to create ahead of time, which I know not only made my brain familiar with health and dance again, but made such a huge difference after a 6-year absence for me to return back to dance, having been gone most of all of my teenage years, and then come back and have an amazing professional career. So I had no idea other than the belief I had that somehow I would survive and do what I loved again. And that belief dictated my brain to seek evidence. And the only way I could do that was by creating.
Oh, I love that. How you create just in your mind when you didn't have the evidence, but you created it in your mind. Where did you get the idea of visualizing from? Was it something you had heard or seen that was just like, I'm just going to create it in my mind?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, right? Because it was 29 years ago. So we had no podcast, we had no internet yet. There was no social media. It was a very different world. If I wanted to know anything about the brain, you'd have to go to the library or buy a book, neuroscience. So what's so interesting and fascinating is that all the time we are either creating from fear or from possibility without even knowing about it, just by what we believe. Again, I didn't connect the dots until 2 decades later that my belief and determination was so strong that caused my brain to find evidence. And the only way it could do that was intrinsically. So I literally just had the thought come to me because back then too, when you were in MRI machines, they didn't have like music or TVs or anything like they do today. So you were just stuck in there with the noise of the machine, right? Trying to just get through the time. So in just sitting there sometime and just thinking about what I was going through and what I wanted to experience again, I just had that thought, but I really believe it was just my brain being directed to find evidence based on my belief that I had. So our brain is always working for us or against us, right? Even if we don't consciously understand it, but the beliefs that we have are directing the brain one way or the other.
So did you feel from connecting the dots in the future when you're like looking back, that was it sounded like a big moment for you or a big transition was actually creating this in your mind. Did you notice that maybe you were creating a pattern before that didn't serve you?
Before I got sick?
Yeah, when you got sick.
No. Honestly, I loved life. And I think that's one reason I survived. I barely napped as a child because I was like, didn't want to miss out on anything. My mom would always say. And so I think the patterns that I had, which was I was, very disciplined to something I loved and dedicated and loved life, really helped me to not just give up and survive. The interesting thing is at the same time, I lived in literal survival for 4 years, literally, right? So my nervous system was in fight or flight for good reason for most of the parts of every day. And I was a fighter, right? And that became my identity for a lot of my life. In fact, I used to wear a necklace that said fighter on it because it was like, I'm a fighter. I won't give up. And while that is true, and it served me, the other side of that was my nervous system learned and practiced how to stay in fight or flight 24/7. And what I didn't understand was that impact. And so even when I survived and was like, well, I'm going to live life now and seize the day, I could feel this internal buzzing that never shut off. And again, we didn't talk about the nervous system back then. There wasn't the information we have now. And so I just remember thinking, man, it's so hard for me to relax. And I knew I was a driven person. At that point, a perfectionist for sure. I knew I wanted to seize life because I felt like I got a second chance at it. But there was this deep internal buzzing that, notwithstanding what I was doing, just wouldn't turn off. And when I went through my second health experience in my 30s, and I lost the ability to walk and my body was launched into chronic pain from a failed hip surgery and nothing was helping me. And they told me my nervous system flipped a switch into pain and I ran out of answers. And that's what drove me to neuroscience and pain science. In studying the nervous system, that's when I realized what had helped me survive the first time around had hardwired my nervous system to stay in fight or flight. And subconsciously that had been running ever since my illness, because in truth, what I did worked, right? I did survive. So anything that we survive, that adaptation, our nervous system wants to stay in because it feels like it served us, right? So I had to do a lot of unwinding to get my nervous system to understand that we could access that beautiful fight or flight survival, but I didn't have to live there 24/7. And that was a big key of my work because my brain felt pretty validated in the need to constantly stay high alert.
Makes sense. And I think a lot of people will resonate with a nervous system on fight or flight. I know we all have different things going on. You've obviously shared yours and what it's done for you. But yeah, was it kind of like regulating the nervous system or kind of rewriting the nervous system?
Yeah, and I love that question because I think most people now are familiar with regulating the nervous system, right? It's something that is talked about a lot. And regulating the nervous system is very important. But it's temporary, right? It's really about kind of managing that current moment, which is beautiful and is necessary in order to rewire because the nervous system isn't receptive to really changing if it's in high alert. So you have to regulate it to bring it back into balance, a more calm state where it feels more safe. That's when it's receptive to new input. But if we don't rewire, meaning change the operating system, then the rest of your life, you're in this constant management mode, right? Where you feel like you have to do all these things throughout the day to get regulated, right? And we know there's a lot you can do, right? There's cold therapy, there's walking and exercise, there's different breath work, there's meditation and mindfulness, there's co-regulation with a friend or a therapist, right? There's self-care. So these are all great and necessary. But I didn't want to feel like the rest of my life was a constant management of my nervous system. I wanted it to get free, right? So regulating is like if you think of turning down the volume of a loud radio, right? Or a loud stereo, like in your car. The stress of the sound is still there, but it's not overwhelming you,
Mm.
right? So that's like regulating. Rewiring is where you're actually changing the operating system. You're not just turning it down, you're teaching that it doesn't have to play that old tune in the first place, right? And so that's where you do like neuroplasticity practices, brain retraining techniques, emotional processing, right? Somatic therapy, trauma-informed processing, and cognitive reframing. That's when you consciously and intentionally expose yourself to new experiences to start to create replace old patterns, right? So we're not just calming the moment, we're really accessing and giving new input so our nervous system starts to change and then long-term respond and act differently, right? That's freedom. Like I wanted freedom, not management the rest of my life, because that also felt exhausting.
Mm. And yeah, you mentioned some of the things that are out there, like breath work and cold showers or cold therapy, plunge therapy, and all these kind of things. But yeah, sounds like you went down the path of like, right, I actually want to change this, make a permanent change. How did you, there's so much information out there at the moment. How did you start to discover all this or work through this in terms of rewiring? Did you get mentored? Did you?
Yeah. Well, literally, I mean, I was brought to desperation to figure it out because my
Mm.
second journey, I was living in unrelenting nerve pain in like 10 areas of my body. So it was hell. And I did, like I said, every Western, Eastern, alternative, regenerative, holistic practice, all the biohacking, I felt like a masochist because I had over 200 types of injections, right? Stem cell, PRP, prolotherapy. I mean, if it existed, I did it. And I had all this chronic pain diagnoses, which they say is the rest of your life. So, in feeling totally desperate and trying to understand pain, which all pain comes from the brain, even though it's real in the body, the brain is the one that converts nerve signals to pain signals. So, that's when I first was brought to the brain. And because I was so determined to get out of pain, I had to figure out how to rewire the nervous system that had gotten stuck in sending these pain signals because I didn't want to just manage pain the rest of my life. So I first started studying pain science because even though every stress response is protective, so whether for someone that's anxiety, depression, OCD, addictions, gut issues, autoimmune, they're all rooted in protection. But pain is the number one protective mechanism in the body. It's how we receive feedback, right? There's a rare genetic disorder. People don't feel pain and they actually live a very short life because they have no feedback from what's going on in their body, right? So the benefit of being in absolute hell is that I had to really understand pain science, which taught me so much about the brain and how it gets hyperactive, hypersensitive, overly protective, and sends these alarm signals, which for me was pain. So in diving deep with that, which my greatest understanding came from some of the best pain scientists in the world, right? They're neuroscientists, but their focus is pain because I had to really understand the mechanisms of how things worked. And then I started to connect the dots because we know the brain, before it sends any stress signal, including pain, we have to see it through this biopsychosocial lens, meaning the brain doesn't just look at that current moment, it looks at your whole life and cross-references everything that's been significant, things that have hurt you, things that have altered you. And it looks at all of that to decide when and where to send stress signals. And in understanding that, I realized, okay, this isn't just about the failed hip surgery that created this pain. It's my brain is looking at this and very much connecting it to the 4 years I nearly died. And those protective signals went into overdrive. And although I had a real reason to feel pain because the surgery was unsuccessful, my body reacted so violently, in large part because of its memory of that very traumatic, hard time. And that's when I realized for all of us, you don't just suddenly have anxiety, you don't just suddenly have depression or OCD or autoimmune. You have this collection of information that your nervous system stores throughout your life. And the more emotionally impactful, the more you extracted disempowering beliefs, right, about you, your life potential around it, the more the brain pays attention to all of that. And it is always cross-referencing that in real time to say, hey, how do I need to protect you physically or emotionally? And when it feels that's necessary, the only way the brain and body can communicate to us is through discomfort, stress signals, right? That's the only way they get our attention of, hey, I'm not feeling safe. I need to protect you. This is reminding me of something from the past. How do I get your attention? Well, I'm going to send anxiety, or I'm going to send pain, or I'm going to send these gut issues. And although I know there's very real physical reasons for any degree of symptom, we know that no system in the body or brain operates independently. It's always looking at us as a person to decide what kind of signals to send. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm curious about the part with beliefs and kind of like the body kind of like seeing what's going on and things like that. So is it often to do with beliefs in your experience that the body's holding on to?
Yeah, absolutely. So you have both. The greatest impact of anything we go through is emotional, right? You can remember the information, the details, but the greatest way it impacted you was emotionally, right? What it did to you, the emotions you felt, but also the beliefs you took from that experience, right? So now we come out of like, I had a belief for a long time that, my body was subpar. Like my whole life, I was going to have to be fighting through things because I just didn't have a body that worked as well as other people, right? Or my body healed slowly because so many doctors had told me that. Or someone else can go through something and now say, I'm not good enough, right? No one's ever going to love me, or I'm not smart enough, or I'll never accomplish amazing things. So those beliefs get stored and now they become the framework of what our brain essentially sees as possible, right? So if you just think about this, your beliefs shape your identity, right? Who you are as a person. That identity is a mental lens that then becomes what the brain looks through to predict what's possible in your life, right? Because the brain is a predicting machine. So if you think you're someone who is, if you identify and your belief is that I'm anxious or I'm always stressed, I'm always overwhelmed, I'll never be good enough, I'll never get it done, there's never enough time, all these beliefs that are part of your identity, the brain now starts to predict more stress, more threat, and more pressure before anything even happens. So when people say I'm always in fight or flight, again, there's deeper reasons, yes, but if your beliefs form and shape that type of identity, you will be in fight or flight a lot because that's what the lens your brain sees through. Where if you start to shift those beliefs to I'm resilient, right? I can grow. I can do hard things, right? I have worth. Then your brain starts to predict capacity. It starts to predict problem solving. It starts to predict growth, right? You've heard the idea of growth mindset, right? A lot of that is linked to your beliefs and your identity. So now the brain isn't predicting threat, pressure, stress, overwhelm. It's predicting capacity. And that sends different neurochemicals to your body. It changes your emotional state. It changes how your nervous system can or cannot regulate, and it changes how you respond and take action. So yes, beliefs and identity are crucial. In fact, you can do anything else, but if you don't really sit down and really look at your beliefs and your identity, who you say you are, then you'll struggle to really change. You'll be facing an uphill battle because you're inadvertently directing your brain to look for and create certain outcomes based on your beliefs and identity.
Makes a lot of sense when I think of it, of something like a belief of life's so hard, or the battle versus life has its challenges, but it's a beautiful place. That for me
Yeah.
would create two different kinds of perceptions.
Yeah. And I think, like I always tell my clients, you can't lie to the brain, okay? Even though we think, but you do direct it. You are the programmer. So you can acknowledge life is hard and I can do hard things, right? Life is hard and it's beautiful, right? It's not an either or, it's an and it's how we navigate through it. And in fact, what everyone wants in this life is resiliency to grow and get through the hard, right? Because if you've lived a life, you've gone through hard things. Like it's going to be part of the experience. And there is a part in the brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex that is directly connected to resilience. Okay. And I love that because we think it's a character trait when really it's something we've practiced. And that area of the brain gets larger. In studying it, they've seen in obese people, it's very small because you're constantly not overriding your desire to do something hard, right? Something you don't want to do, essentially. Like, I don't want to eat this, but I'm going to. That area of the brain shrinks. So it's larger in athletes, but do you know where it is the largest in? Is people who see themselves as going through something hard, but they're overcoming it. That's where that part of the brain is the largest. So there's something very beautiful and empowering at acknowledging life is hard and I can do it and I can grow and I'm becoming a greater person and I'm going to get to the other side of it. That's something that feels empowering. It's not false positivity. It's really rooted in this belief that you can handle and overcome the hard while also enjoying and recognizing the good because they do coexist.
So it's not telling yourself like an affirmation of like I'm a billionaire when you're broke and all these kind of things. It's like, working with the brain but reframing it slightly.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because it's something I talk about with clients all the time. And affirmations have their place, right? But I think they often feel very inauthentic and disingenuous to people because if you have huge amount of debts and you're looking in the mirror and saying, I'm a millionaire, your brain has a BS radar and it's being activated, right? It's like, hello, remember your bank account. But when you reframe it, to being in the journey, meaning you're in the pursuit of becoming a millionaire, that doesn't activate the BS radar. So I am becoming debt free. I am moving towards financial freedom, right? Like for me, when I was dying and could hardly even hold myself up in front of the mirror, to look at myself in the mirror, which I already hated doing because I hated my reflection, right? It just didn't look like me at all. To look at myself and say, I am healthy, felt like a very real lie. So every day I would say, I am healing a little bit more each and every day. So now I'm not declaring that I am something that I'm not yet, but I am absolutely declaring and directing my brain that, hey, this is what we're moving towards. And that actually helps engage me to take action to move towards that, right? Because it's like, yes. And dopamine is really the motivator molecule, the neuromolecule. So when we're declaring, we're directing our brain, this is what I'm moving towards. And then every day when you take action in alignment with that, it builds momentum. And then we start to build evidence with our actions and what we're speaking that we're in fact becoming that person or that thing or that health or that financial status. And I've just seen when people can reframe that way, they start to feel empowered and then they really do become their coach. And in that, they're programming their brain to take action and they're moving in a journey, which is really all we as humans crave is progress. So it's not even the final destination, right? Because you hear people all the time, they reach their goals and then they're like, wow, I thought I'd feel better. You know, it's like a temporary sense of satisfaction. And then it's like, well, what's next? Because humans crave progress. So when we can embody that journey and feel like we're forward motion, that's more empowering than anything else.
I love that. Like saying I'm becoming healthy or I'm becoming more abundant financially every day is
Yes.
a great alternative for someone who's wanting to like shift like their identity or kind of like move it a little bit. From your like work, from your experience, is that something that takes a while, or can it in some cases be a sudden transformation if someone makes a big decision that they want to change who they are?
Well, the beautiful thing about the brain is we found that the greater the elevated emotion, the faster the brain can change. So I never like put parameters on how long or how fast
Oh yeah,
because we've seen both,
33
right?
days. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right? And I always tell my clients, be open to both. Like the journey is worth the time to get there and don't think it has to be long and hard to get there because then you're also putting barriers, right? So what can take people the long time is not really understanding the roots of those belief systems and that identity. Because your brain won't just let it go. It's formed from experiences in your life that validate its need to stay there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to take the time, which very few people are. I mean, more are today, but to really sit down and ask, like, what do I believe? What is my identity? What are those things I frequently say about myself, right? Where did that come from? Who is that connected to? Right? What are the experiences that validate that to my brain? Because my brain's looking to all of that to justify staying there. And remember, the brain loves what's familiar. So your identity has now become known and predictable to the brain. So you first have to know where it came from, what it's connected to. If you need to process out, right, and work through some unresolved emotions or impact from those experiences, because that's a very important part to help the brain release that, to then you have to have a replacement. So if I have this identity that, like for me, because everyone had told me healing is hard, okay, like my body heals slowly. And I think, well, that's not a very good part of my identity. I can't just let that go. See, a lot of times we go, well, I don't want to think that way anymore. I don't want that to be part of me anymore. If you don't give the brain a new meaning, a new identity, then the brain will revert back to the old because it cannot have empty space, right? Remember those beliefs and your identity, they're connected to your life. They're connected to real experiences you've had. So the brain can't let that go without a new meaning because the brain has to have meaning. So once you identify what it's connected to, and if you need to move through, process, write out, feel the emotional impact of that, have a conversation that needs to be had, right? You process out that experience and who it's connected to. Then you have to give the brain a new belief, a new identity to take its place because it can't be left void. And I see that mistake a lot. Like, well, I don't want to think that way, or I don't want to feel that way, or I don't want to be that person anymore. Well, then what do you want to think? And who do you want to be? If you don't tell your brain that, then it will revert eventually back to what it knows.
Mm. Putting something there, like getting it a new focus, a new
That's
way
right.
of being, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I had to heal out a lot of emotional impact of what I'd gone through because it was significant. But then I had to go on the process of reestablishing trust with my body. But then I had to start really embracing that no, my body was designed to heal. My body was designed to heal like anyone else. And I have seen that. I've cut my body and I've seen it heal itself. So it doesn't serve me to say, oh, my body heals slowly, even though I've been told that. No, I believe that my body was divinely created like anybody else's. So, no, my body can heal fast. My body was designed to do this, right? I had to redirect my brain to the new belief consistently to teach it. I'm establishing a neural pathway that is part of my identity versus, no, I don't want to think that anymore. I'm just going to try to not think that anymore. And the brain's like, well, but then what do I think about in relationship to your body? I have to teach that new input. Does that make sense? We can't just
Mm.
let something go. We have to give the brain clarity on what it's now moving towards and then take the actions in alignment with that. Because if we don't create evidence to the brain that we're becoming this person, that this is possible, part of our new identity, then the brain will have a hard time taking hold of it. Right?
I think your message impacts a lot of people with because as often I've definitely been through it myself and been guilty of it, of like being like, I don't want to be sad anymore, I don't want to be depressed anymore, I don't want to be anxious anymore, I don't want to be this stressed anymore, right? But nothing's been put into place there.
Yeah. Well, and we've all done it, myself
Of
included,
course, yeah.
right? Because it's just the brain's inherent wiring is like, what do I don't want? What do I want to move away from, right? Versus the strongest mechanism in the brain is what do I want to be pulled towards? And if we don't give it that, then its mechanism is I don't want this, right?
Mm.
But the brain also doesn't differentiate don't. So like, and you've heard this probably. If I say don't think of a purple elephant,
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of a
right?
purple
The brain's
elephant.
like,
Right, yeah,
purple elephant. If I just keep saying that, I don't think of a purple elephant, don't think of purple elephant, don't be anxious, don't be anxious, don't be stressed. The brain just goes, okay, stressed, okay, anxious. But if I start saying, think of a red elephant, think of and possibility, okay, there's stress in my life, and I'm going to create these moments of rest and relaxation and fun. And well, this might be busy, but do I have to give it the meaning of stress,
yeah.
right? So if I don't give the brain a direction and just focus on what I don't want to experience, I'm going to get more of that because I'm telling the brain what to focus on. Right. And none of us do it purposefully. It's human nature. But when you understand then how the brain works, you really start to better understand how to help yourself, right? And to start to feel better and different, which is why I love the brain, because the more we understand how it works, the more we feel capable in our life and not so powerless to our situations and our circumstances.
Rewrite, yeah, rewriting on our terms, it sounds like as well.
Yes, we we all have that ability, all of us. It has nothing to do with intellect.
Mm.
It's how the brain works. We just if we don't talk to the brain, our brain will talk to us from fear and limitation and stress. Believe me, we all have that, all of us. But when we understand that we can also redirect the brain and create new ways of being thinking with repetition and practice, then I've definitely seen no one is beyond being able to fundamentally change their life if they're willing to take that stewardship over their life, but also their brain, right? It's an inside out job, first and foremost.
I
And
love
it's not easy.
so much work, and you're a great example of someone who's done so much work on her brain. I know you're helping a lot of people with this out there. I'd love to know where the name bio-emotional healing came from.
Yes, I got to give that credit to my husband. I'm so grateful for him because when I was creating my process, because that's what I really knew was needed. There were different practices and modalities, but I could not find a process, like a step by step. People were saying visualizing is the key, meditation is the key, right? I did EMDR and brain work. I did somatic therapy and energy work, but I was like, well, what is that inside out process? And as I was being my own guinea pig and putting it together, and I was explaining it to my husband, and I'm like, well, there's the brain part. It's all based in neuroscience. So like that's our biology, right? That's how we harness our brain and how it communicates to the body. But also the other part of the nervous system is the body, and the body speaks emotionally. The body holds our emotions. It holds the emotional impact of our life. So we have to do brain and body. And as I was, just throwing out terms, he's like, well, biology, emotional, the body, healing. And my husband really connected to the dots and came up with the name, which I'm so grateful for.
Bio-emotional healing. I love that.
Yeah.
How are you sort of like supporting people with this work? Is it kind of like groups? Is it kind of like one-to-one? Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I have both options.
Mm,
The process of bioemotional healing, which is my greatest confidence. It's the process I did. It's the process every client has done. So we're not guessing or experimenting. We all have the same mechanisms, right, in our nervous system. So that process is in an online portal that's private to my clients, and that unlocks 1 week at a time, because something I certainly realized is it's not just the steps, it's the order and the combination of the steps that makes the greatest difference in the brain
mm,
actually progressing, right? Like step 8 is great, but without the foundation of steps 1 through 7, the brain isn't ready or fully receptive to step 8. So the process is in this online portal. My clients go through it 1 week at a time, and then I coach them through it. So
mm.
the coaching sessions are very connected to the material they're working through that week and the practices. And so I offer both. I have clients that go through in a group setting, and then I have clients who go through one-on-one. And some of that is for privacy reasons, or some people just do better that way. So I offer both different routes.
Amazing. Yeah, I was wondering if there were some steps to it as well you take them through.
It's all steps,
Oh, amazing.
which which is again my greatest confidence. And I have confidence in myself and in my knowledge and what I can share, but also I'm not just reliant on that. This process has been proven now for 8 years. I've seen it. Clients who, to the depths of physical, to the depths of emotional and traumatic. And if someone is willing to follow the steps, because they have to do it, right? And I
Mm,
tell my
sure.
clients that I will show you the how, and I will support you and coach you through this. But you're going to be the one to change your life. But the beautiful thing about actually having steps that are in a process that I actually give my clients access to forever, they now know how to be powerful in their life. And the goal is they don't need me on the other side of it. They now have that within them, because that's my mission, to help them to learn how to fundamentally change their life so they're free and move forward. And now all that knowledge and capacity is connected to them, not me, because I want people to know, yeah, I have an incredible story. I've defied the odds twice and I've been through hell and back, but I can show you how to do it in your life, in your circumstance, by these steps that really work to rewire your nervous system. And that's what I get so excited about, because I want people to really know the steps of how to be just as powerful to heal their life, to redefine their life, to change their life. Because yes, change is hard, healing is hard, but when you don't have the right steps, then yeah, it's really hard because you're battling your brain. But when you can work with it, our brain and our body were designed to change and to heal. I mean, and I know that firsthand, right? And I've seen it replicated in others, which is just as equal of a victory. Really being able to see people heal and change their life, it's incredible. Makes it worth it. Makes it all worth it, right? I mean, it's come at a cost, but I'm certainly so grateful to be where I'm at, but to also see other people get there, because the world needs more of that.
You can see the passion behind it and the excitement. And what I've really taken away, and I've never thought about it this way, is the difference between rewiring and the regulating the nervous system. Because yeah, I've done like breathwork training and things like that, which is great. It's like really, good to calm you down in the moment. But the way you've kind of like really good perspective and approach to actually how you can rewire it rather than having to always be like
Right.
regulating with so many things. That's been a huge
Yeah.
thing for me. to the
Yeah, and
point.
believe me, I love cold plunges. I have a sauna, I have an EMF mat. Like I love those things, right? And I love exercise, but I would still be in pain if I hadn't rewired my nervous system. And I would still have PTSD around my body if I hadn't rewired my nervous system. And every symptom and sensation I feel in my body would still send me into fear over what does this mean? Am I going to get sick again? Is this pain going to become chronic? Right? Because the regulating brings the stress response down, but it doesn't heal the underlying
Mm,
problem,
mm,
right? Like that radio station, that stress is still there. It's just
mm.
you
Just
can
turn down a
manage
little
it. You
bit.
can manage it. Yeah. So when we move into these rewiring practices, regulating is part of getting their system to a place to do the practices to rewire, right?
Mm,
So they're very important, but they're not the end all be all. Right.
yeah.
And that's where I feel we've kind of gotten stuck when we talk about the nervous system is regulating it. And really what I tell my clients is you want a flexible nervous system because you're going to be activated in life. And we
Mm,
want that. The fight or flight mechanism is life-saving. It's beautiful. I mean, right now I'm accessing it. Like to be have adrenaline and have energy and passion. Part of that is your fight or flight.
mm,
Right. But I want a flexible nervous system that doesn't get stuck. It comes in and out as it needs to, and it does it easily because it's flexible, because it's living moment to moment, not my past dictating
mm,
how I'm feeling every moment in conjunction to my present. That's real freedom.
mm. Not the past kind of like trauma you went through, like running your whole day to day, 24/7. Yeah,
Yeah.
rewiring
Which
that.
which it is for most of us because
Mm,
that's what the brain is a data bank of our past. That's what it references to decide what we do in the present and how we react in the present. If we don't heal and look at and process out and reframe it, right, consciously,
mm.
then subconsciously our past is running the show.
What's kind of just coming up for me as well when you're saying that, is, some people go down what society might call like bad habits when you're having to stay on top, maybe drinking too much, drugs, other addictions, whatever it is. But then there's some, like, sometimes it's like doing too much. It's like, got exercise X amount a day and these things look good, or I'm going to work so hard and all these kind of things, which could be seen as the nervous system just on that fight or flight and just ways to run away from it. But what I feel like with what you're doing is actually just, calming it down, or changing it rather than having
Yeah,
to get into those
changing it
habits.
and underlying what's driving
Mm,
those behaviors because the addiction is a symptom, right? The behavior is a symptom and of usually deeper belief systems and impact and emotions that are running something to escape from, to feel loved, to feel accepted, to feel connected, to have control, right? That was part of like why I was a quote perfectionist is because I felt like I had such little control over my life when I was sick, and I lost the ability to be a teenager, to live a life, to do what I loved. So it was like, well, what can I control? And my number one thing I can control was my academics, right? Because I could just control that. And so it needed to be perfect because that gave me a sense of safety, right? So many people who need control or they need to feel loved or they need to feel accepted or comforted, that's driving these behaviors. And the goal is not to then just distract so we don't do it. It's to understand the deeper components that are driving it so that we don't just pull out weeds, but we have to keep pulling out weeds. Like let's get actually to the root so that the drive to do these behaviors isn't so strong and then eventually not there, right? Because that's why a lot of people give up is because the battle is so strong to overcome it. Let's actually go deeper so that we can heal what's pushing you towards that. Like I had a client who's alcoholic and did all the Alcoholic Anonymous, went even to treatment centers, everything. And he kept falling back into alcoholism because no one really had looked at, he lost both his parents and he felt very alone. And when he would go and drink, he would feel connected to people, right? He would numb out, he would forget his loneliness, and it would make him feel out of body connected to all the other people who were there drinking. But then it was a vicious cycle, right? Because then he felt worse about himself, eroded his sense of worth and confidence, didn't have his parents there to support him. I mean, so until we really looked at that, healed that impact, processed his belief systems about himself and who he could find that he could connect with, built his self-worth, that he was worth worthier connections, right? Because alcoholism also erodes your sense of worth. Well, then the alcoholism was so strong until we actually healed him as a person, not just the behavior.
Amazing. Ashleigh, I know you're helping many people like that in what you're doing. I know you've got your coaching one-on-one with other people. So as we kind of like wrap up today, I'd love to know, and there's tons more that you offer in terms of value, where the listener can find you when they want to reach out to you, find out more about your work, your resources, what you've got. And is there maybe a final point, maybe recapping something you shared or anything else you'd like to add today?
Sure. So you can find all my resources at my website, or you can, social media is my name, Ashleigh Di Lello, which I'm sure you'll link because there's
Yeah,
no
in
easy
the
way to
show
spell
notes.
my
Yeah.
name. My website is ashleighdilello.com. If you search bio-emotional healing, you'll also find me. But there on my website, I have a free brain body blueprint. That is a great 3-step action plan to start to downregulate your stress responses, connect with your body, start to take action to help you start to actually change what you're doing instead of just calm it and then keep going. Right. So that's a great resource. Use it. I know it's free, so people tend to do nothing with it, but I promise you it's effective. So I have that blueprint. I have a deeper training on the brain that the more you understand how the brain works, the less broken you feel and the more possibility you start to tap into. You can watch the training there if you're stuck physically, mentally, emotionally in your work and relationships, and you've done so many things, which most of my clients have. Then you can schedule a consultation from my website. It's a free consultation where we talk about your life and you and your journey so I can better understand if it's a good fit. And then if it is, then we move forward and you get to actually change your operating system, right? Which is so incredible. So you can find all of that there. And my message in alignment with that is I know and can stay with absolute certainty because of what I've lived and what I've overcome and what I've seen now for 8 years. No one is too far gone or too stuck or too damaged or too broken when you have the right process and tools to change your operating system. I've had clients who are 15. I've had clients who are 83 years old, 83 years old with very well established neural pathways, and she still too could change. Like, we've all heard change is hard. Yes, but the brain is also designed to change. We just need the how and the steps. And healing doesn't have to take as long or be as hard as we think it needs to when you have the right tools. Because I think now it's like people are like, well, the rest of my life I'm going to be healing. I'm going to be healing my trauma. I'm going to be healing my childhood. I'm going to be healing my body. And it's like, no, it's going to take effort. I promise you that. And every time frame is a little different with clients, but I know, and I never put limits, and I've witnessed it, that we can change our life and we can get free and live with actual joy and purpose and confidence and safety. And we don't just have to fight for that. We can really claim that, and it can be authentic. And I know every human has that ability. You have to desire it and you have to put forth the effort. But I promise you, life can be so much greater than just hard and surviving. I promise. And I've been there. I've been to the depths of hell and for years, right? My journey was not a short one either time. And I know you can get to the other side. It's not just reserved for me or other people.
Oh, amazing. Wow. Ashleigh, I love how inspirational let me say that again, inspirational you've been for me on this podcast of what's like possible to rewire that nervous system, create a new perception, create a new life, start changing things from the inside to the outside. I know you have impacted many people, the people you've worked with, some amazing stories there. For Ashleigh's resources, you can find them in the show notes below. Her website, her social media to reach out, get in contact, including that amazing resource she's providing for us. So I just want to say a final thank you for everything you've shared today, Ashleigh.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I love what you put out into the world, so I'm grateful to be here.
Of course, thank you. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.